I met a horse today.
Oh. Uh-huh.
In Animal Crossing, I went to an island.
Yeah.
And there was a weird horse man.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't like him.
Oh. What was his name?
I don't know, but he gave me weird vibes. I don't know. He was a weird horse. He creeped me out.
With the way internet culture is, anything can be a weird horse.
That's true.
Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hello. Welcome to Cinema Crush.
I'm Emily Salisbury.
And I'm Jacob Salisbury.
And we're going to watch some movies.
We're going to watch one movie.
Yeah, I guess. But it's one very long movie.
It is one very long movie.
Well, life update. I got a Nintendo Switch Lite and Animal Crossing, which I already have been playing for a while because I got it right when it came out.
But now we can both play it.
But now we can both play it because we have 2 copies. That was my birthday present from you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because it's nice to play video games with other people sometimes.
You're very particular on your video games too.
Yeah, I like stories in video games, but I don't like actually doing the work.
So you're a lazy gamer.
Yeah, I like to watch other people do it. I don't like to do it myself. I also just have a really hard time with any video game where your movement and your camera angle are 2 separate controls, especially if there's any amount of combat involved. But that is not an exclusive condition. Any game with a separate camera movement is really hard for me for some reason. I just don't put in enough time or effort to get used to it. So I just kind of write off games like that because they're really hard for me.
You could play Hollow Knight. That has a single camera control.
Yeah, I guess that's a platformer. Maybe I would be really good at it, and then you'd be mad.
And then I'd be really mad. Nah, I'd cheer you on.
Maybe I should try.
You could try.
We could try Cuphead. I don't know if I want to do that.
Cuphead is fun because you could do it together.
Yeah. But I don't really I don't want to be involved in your beef with Cuphead.
Yeah. But anyway, happy birthday. Happy late birthday.
Happy early birthday.
Yeah, well, by the time this episode airs, it'll be my post-birthday as well, because our birthdays are a week apart.
Yeah.
It's party week. Yeah. September, baby.
It has not felt like party week.
No.
It has felt so busy.
We've been so busy at work, both of us.
Yeah.
So, it's nice to just sit down and watch a movie.
Yeah. I feel like I've just been going all week and I've had to be on. It hasn't felt normal energy-wise the past couple of weeks. I think it's because I've been working on Saturdays and I got used to not working on Saturdays for a couple of weeks, and now I've been covering shifts at the coffee shop. And that's not going to change because next week I'm going to do that too. And then you'll have your big open house event at school, and then it'll kind of be done with big events for...
Yeah, we got a big event coming up that we've been planning all month for.
Mm-hmm.
But it's coming together, and it'll be good.
Yeah, I think so. So, on Tuesday, which is your birthday, we're going to go see Avatar in the IMAX theater.
James Cameron Avatar, back in IMAX.
I remember when that movie came out. That was such a big deal.
I'm sure we'll talk about Avatar 2 when it comes out.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to. Because, I was super into that movie, and I really wanted more movies, but...
I was into that movie too, but not for the plot.
I liked the plot, but then over the years... There's been a lot of critique of the plot, and I see the critiques, and I acknowledge them, and I think that they're valid. But I also think it is a fun movie to watch.
He's also a weird director, because he'll just come in and, make Titanic, and then leave for 10 years.
Yeah,
and then come back and say, here's Avatar, and then leave for another decade.
What was the movie that allowed him to be able to do that? Was it Titanic?
I don't know. Probably.
I'd like to know, because I feel like that happens with like actors and directors.
Yeah.
It's like you make one big blockbuster and then that basically funds you enough to the point where you can just do whatever you want, which is really cool if you have a director who's like an artist and wants to make really unique movies and tell really unique stories, or like break boundaries in technology for cinema, like James Cameron.
Daniel Day-Lewis is also kind of like that. He'll just like be in a movie and then like win all the Oscars.
Yeah.
And then not be in anything for another decade.
Yeah. Another movie that we might need to review is, so I don't know how interested you would be in it, but Harry Styles was cast in another movie recently, the pop sensation. But he was in a movie that just came out called Don't Worry, Darling, which is like a psychological thriller kind of a thing.
Well, you can bring that to your episode.
Yeah.
But today's my episode.
This is your episode.
Do you want to know what we're watching today?
Sure.
We're going to watch Dune. But not the new one.
Not the new one.
We're going to watch the original movie from 1984.
I see.
Which you've never seen.
I have not, but I've heard things about it.
I have seen it, and I've read the book. But I haven't seen it after I've read the book. So this will be interesting. I suppose this is also a movie for my father, my papa, because he also likes Dune and introduced it to me. But I would always fall asleep right after the worm scene. So I never made it through the movie for the longest time. So I've seen this movie all the way through once. So this movie is directed by David Lynch, but it wasn't originally going to be directed by him.
What else has he directed?
Elephant Man.
I have not seen that.
He's done some artsy films, because he likes to do artsy films, and this is his first, like, big budget cinematic, and his last big budget cinematic film.
Oh.
Because he didn't have a very good experience, I guess, making it. But the original choice of director was actually Ridley Scott.
That makes so much sense.
So we could have had director of Aliens making Dune, which I think would have been a really interesting movie. So this movie is not a Ridley Scott movie at all in style.
Yeah.
Because he had to leave the production, I think because his brother died or something like that.
Oh, okay.
This is not the first time that someone has tried to adapt the book into a film. The book came out in 1970s, like early 70s, and they were attempting to make it into a film like just a few years after the book came out. But if any of you have read the book Dune, you'll know that it is an extremely hard book to adapt because of the grand scale of everything. Not just in the world, but like in the timeline of Dune. And Frank Herbert also has a very different interpretation of what future technology looks like compared to other sci-fis, because it's not like laser guns and everyone relying on robots and all that. It's very grounded, and in fact there is an aversion to super weapons and stuff like that because of the destruction that they've had in the past. But they tried to get this film off the ground. Frank Herbert actually helped with that and wrote an enormous script for it, which was going to be like a 3-hour movie. But it didn't work out. Then things were going around with Ridley Scott. He couldn't do it and ended up not coming back to production because I think he did Blade Runner. So it went kind of all the way around, and David Lynch actually turned down working on Return of the Jedi to do this movie.
Like, working on it in what capacity?
Like, directing it. But it took a long time to get made. Went through lots of changes in the cast and the crew. David Lynch had not heard of Dune before he was offered the film. Just sounded like an interesting concept. So he did it.
I love when that happens. I feel like that's a very Harrison Ford thing of him to do. So I feel like that's what Harrison Ford does. He's like, I don't know. Or like Mads Mikkelsen. He doesn't know anything, but he really comes in and serves an excellent performance anyway. So, obviously, what year did the new Dune come out?
2021?
Yeah. Obviously, they're making that into a two-parter.
Well, I think they're doing the whole series.
Yes.
But for the first book, they're doing two parts.
Book. Is this not like that?
No, so this is the whole book in one film.
Okay.
The whole book in 2 hours.
Gotcha.
So there are things that are cut, there are things that are added, there are things that are very different about it. Overall, it does capture the same vibe, but it's a very different movie. Because you've seen the new Dune.
Yeah.
You have not read the book.
Right. But the new Dune has very striking imagery and storytelling, and, like, it's a movie that I definitely, like, I can identify and pick out specific scenes because it's really well done. So I'm curious about how this one will hold up to that. Obviously, like, I think it's to my benefit to have seen the other one because, you know, I'm vaguely familiar with the plot, but obviously if they're adding things and changing things about it in this one, then
yeah. The things I think you'll like are the visual effects. Because, like some of the big movies of the 80s, like Blade Runner and Star Wars, this Dune also kind of pushed the boundaries of special effects.
Okay.
In many ways. So the worm is actually practical in it, which is super cool.
Huh.
But this movie did not perform well.
No.
It had a budget of $40 million, and it made $30 million.
Oh, no.
So it bombed at the box office, but it is a cult classic because people keep coming back to it.
Right.
Are you familiar with Sting, the singer?
Vaguely. Is he in it?
He's in it.
What?
Yeah. He's like one of the main villains in this.
Didn't they want to get Sting for the Labyrinth?
And maybe?
I feel like
that would make sense.
I feel like he was the other, like, really popular 80s pop singer.
It's a cool movie. And I think you'll also be surprised at some of the casting. You'll recognize some of them.
Okay.
And you'll probably not recognize others. Paul was specifically cast because he was kind of a nobody.
Okay.
His name's Kyle MacLachlan.
Was he in anything after that? Like, was this his big break? Or did that kind of, like, end his career?
He's been in Twin Peaks. He's been in Blue Violet. He's been in Desperate Housewives. He's been in the Flintstones, apparently.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But at the time, he wasn't really a big name.
Oh my gosh. Okay, y'all, he's Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. This will be really interesting.
Yeah, but he's super young.
Yeah, he's like baby. Well, because I was looking at the images that you just pulled up of him, and I'm like, oh, that's Dale Cooper. Okay. So we really need to watch Twin Peaks together also. Apparently, the place Twin Peaks is filmed is up in Washington. It's like a 3-hour drive from here.
Oh.
So we need to watch Twin Peaks and then go up there.
Fun.
And visit. But I think you would like it. But that's really interesting.
Are you ready for a wild time?
I think so. But I think I need some refreshments before we...
Oh yeah, let's hit the concession stand.
Yeah.
In our segment... Weird Snacks and Drinks.
Do you have to do the little action? Your choreography?
Yes, I do.
Alright, go get it.
But tell the audience about when we first encountered this magical drink.
Glass is nice. So we went, what movie did we see?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. We went and saw a movie at the movie theater. Give me that good...
Time for the soundbite.
Whoa.
So this is Nitro Pepsi.
Yeah, so I tried this at the movie theater, but obviously at the movie theater, you're going to drink it out of a can because it's like the fancy Nitro Pepsi or whatever. But the intended instructions on how to drink this are to pour it into a glass, preferably a chilled glass. Essentially drinking it like a, not like a nitro cold brew. It's nitro, so it's got like nitrogen. It's nitrogen infused. And so it claims that it has smaller bubbles and smoother taste. And it calls it a draft cola, like it's some kind of craft beer or something. So, yeah.
Well, let's see what this tastes like. We've got it in a chilled glass that I've prepared.
Yeah, so we've tried this directly out of a can.
It was okay.
But this is the way that Pepsi God intended.
This is the proper setup for this drink, how you're supposed to have it.
Do you remember what it was like out of a can?
I do, and this is different. I find this more enjoyable, because out of the can, I feel like it was kind of a weird texture. This feels much more smooth. It was already smooth, but like this feels better.
It still just feels like flat Pepsi to me.
It doesn't taste flat to me. It just tastes like it has a different texture to it. It's like the viscosity of the liquid is different.
I don't know how I feel about it. It's like...
It doesn't have the, like, kick that a soda has.
Yeah. Like, I think when somebody wants to drink a soda, I think part of the experience that they're looking for is the bubbles. So having a soda where the intent is to have essentially, like, non-existent bubbles seems counterintuitive to me. I'm not saying it's bad, like, it tastes fine, but I don't know, I feel like it's a gimmick.
It's an interesting experiment.
You're selling a 4-pack of, what are these, like, 13.5-ounce Pepsi cans for, like, the same price as a 12-pack, so, just feels like a gimmick. It's not even, like, real sugar.
Well,
so
that's your opinion.
That's my opinion. I think it's all a scam.
And I think it's okay if you're in the mood for it.
Yeah. If you want to feel a little fancy with your soda, I guess you could get this.
This is soda for grown-ups.
No, that would have alcohol in it. They make that. We should try that.
Do they? That sounds gross.
No, it's good.
Is it?
Yeah. If you get the right ones. Some of them are bad. But they're like, not your father's
I guess there's like rum and Coke, huh?
Yeah, that's a very popular drink. That's different though, because that's like hard liquor. I'm talking like a cider or like a hard tea or something.
But carbonated?
Instead, it's a soda.
Weird.
I am curious what this would do for a rum and Coke kind of a situation. I don't know if you would do Pepsi in a rum and Coke.
Yeah, but like if there's other kind of nitro sodas, if you like mixed it with stuff.
Yeah, I could see people doing that. Well, I think that concludes our review of this soda. It's fine. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up before we...
I think the only thing I want to say about the version of Dune that we're watching, this is a Blu-ray that I got from Barnes & Noble, and it is the 4K restoration of the original camera negative. So I'm presenting you the best possible way to watch it. This is probably the highest resolution I've ever seen this film in.
Yeah, because I've seen, like, the only other version I've seen of this is just the regular DVD. Because I feel like sometimes with, like, movies from, like, this time period, having the lower quality film almost helps. Because it kind of, like, smooths over any of the, like, rough parts in effects and things like that.
Yeah,
so,
there's a science to restoring old films.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see how well this one holds up. But let's watch it.
Let's go watch it.
And we'll see you guys after the break.
And see you then.
It's intermission time.
Hello, and welcome to the middle part of the podcast, where you get to hang out with me, because it's my week. If you like what you hear and want to support our podcast, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CinemaCrushPod. That's at CinemaCrushPod, all one word. You can also email us at cinemacrushpod@gmail.com with any questions or comments that you have about our podcast. We'll be posting updates on our social media, sharing things that we love. So tweet at us, DM us, comment on stuff. We want to hear from you. Send us a love letter. We are publishing episodes bi-weekly, so look for us again in 2 weeks with a new episode. But during the off weeks, we are still doing our Rings of Power special. So you're going to get even more content Those are also going to be bi-weekly. We really appreciate you for listening and giving this podcast a chance. Please share us with people that you think would enjoy our content. We want to get the word out. And that's all the announcements that I have for this episode. So let's get you back for our review and reflection. Hey folks, this is Jacob again. Funny story, our cat chewed through part of our audio cord, so our recording got a little bit funky. But I've cleaned it up about as best I can, so that you don't have to listen to this the whole time. But we have a new cord, it's fixed now, so next episode should be totally fine and crystal clear. So I'll transition you back to the episode. Thanks.
And now, on with the show.
Hello, and welcome back.
Welcome back.
We have watched Dune from 1984.
It was an experience.
It is an experience. I had so much fun watching this again. It's been a long time since I've seen it. And I will say, the 4K restoration that we got was absolutely worth it because this film looked amazing.
In all its
1984 visual effects glory.
Yeah.
But what are your first thoughts?
No thoughts.
Speechless, I see.
It is a movie. I can't say I would watch it again. I cannot say that it's like the storytelling of its time, quote unquote, because I've seen other movies from the 80s and they're good. This just didn't have like super compelling storytelling to me.
Which is such a shame because the novel is such a treasure of sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they were trying to adapt the book, but they were trying to adapt parts of the book, and then they were trying to add things in, like, to make it more interesting, but it didn't. It just made it more confusing. And I will say I definitely think the 2021 version is one I would come back to, not necessarily this one. There are some wild scenes in this one that I would like want to like send clips of to people to be like, hey, this is part of Dune, but not necessarily like a full movie that I would want to rewatch. And there's also not like a sequel or anything after this, so it's not like part of a series.
So here's the thing. They had fully planned on doing a sequel and like the next book after that.
Oh.
And then, like I said before, this movie did not make its money back.
Yeah.
So all plans for sequels was like flew out the window. It was received critically, I think, well, just not financially well.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, the critic in me, I have seen better performances out of the actors that I had seen before. Obviously, like, Kyle MacLachlan is young in this, and, like, I know we referenced Twin Peaks before. His performance in that is much better.
He's also the dad in Inside Out, I just learned.
Yes, this is true. He's the dad in Inside Out, and I believe we will be seeing a reappearance of him in the Inside Out 2 movie that's coming out.
Yeah.
Sometime in the near future.
So he's still topical.
Yeah.
He's happening.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's not like he was ever not happening, but I think in this movie, a lot of the performances that the actors were giving were just too distracting.
Yeah. Even Patrick Stewart, who I know is a fantastic actor, was okay.
Yeah. It just felt too much like actors performing as characters and not as like characters in a world interacting. And I don't know if that's because we don't get a lot of scenes where like characters get to interact in a very personal way. It's pretty much just like fast tracking you through like all of the things that happen.
Well, the thing is, we don't really have time to do that because the book is so long and so dense.
Yeah.
That if you're trying to cram it into a 2 hour 11-minute movie, you just got to get through it.
I wonder if this movie would have been received better, though, if they had gone the route. And I know that this was not as common of a thing in in the before the like 2000s, but if they had done a 2-part situation like they're doing for the new Dune movies.
Probably, because the first half of this movie, like the first half of the book that's adapted, is actually paced rather well.
Yeah.
You could actually directly compare it pretty well to the new Dune in terms of like scene for scene comparison. But the second half of the book just flies by in the last 40 minutes, half hour.
Yeah.
There's so much that they skip over from the book.
Yeah, but I mean, even so, like if I'm comparing it to other sci-fi that, like, say I've seen Patrick Stewart in, his performance in Star Trek is more compelling. And I think that's just because Star Trek, you know, obviously it's a series, so they can slow down and spend more time with characters, and you get to know characters better.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love just like, because you've told me like Gurney in the books is like kind of a funny guy.
He is kind of funny, and both Patrick Stewart and Josh Brolin in the two series they're both good Gurneys, but neither of them are the perfect Gurney for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the books, Gurney plays music. That's a huge part of his character.
Yeah.
And they allude to that in both films, but they never actually show him playing.
Yeah. Like, he walks in with this big old instrument in this version.
Yeah. Like, he is a serious character, but he does really care about Paul.
Yeah. I didn't really get that from this movie. Until, like, the end, when Gurney shows up and is, like, still alive. And he's like, I thought you were dead. And then they, like, hug. But I was like, I don't understand where that was founded.
And he still has the dog.
And he still... Okay, let's talk about this. Dogs show up a lot.
I don't know why, because they're not in the book.
They actually use animals more than a lot of movies that I've seen. Because, like, so there's, at the beginning, when they're in the Emperor's Palace, or whatever you call it, there's just, like, a herd of bulldogs that somebody is leading through the area. And then there's just this pug Leto has, and then Gurney ends up with it eventually.
It's the House Atreides pug.
A bulldog would make more sense if House Atreides is represented by a bull, wouldn't it?
Maybe.
I don't know if that's what you call these dogs in sci-fi, though. So maybe a pug is called a bulldog. I don't know. They never explain it. They're just kind of there. There's also a scene that involves a cat and a rat.
Yeah, they're like taped together.
And I'm like, that can't be PETA compliant.
It's absolutely not. And also not in the book.
No, yeah. None of these animals, like, the only animals I am aware of being involved are, like, the worms. So
yeah, they really are the focus. The worms and the little mouse Mordi, which they don't even show in this.
Yeah, they reference Paul's name being Muad'Dib, but then they never actually, like,
show the animal.
He's just like, what's that, like, mouse shadow in the moon? That must be where they brought it in, because that was something we were confused about, was the moon.
Yeah, they had a lot of moon imagery, and that's not really the focus of Paul's journey in the books.
Which, again, they have all these other random animals, but they're not referencing the mouse that lives in Dune.
The, like, little Jerboa mouse thing that is resourceful and, like, is what his character is based off of.
Yeah. Anyway.
But before we dive into talking about the story, I want to tell you some funny stories about this production. Specifically Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
So, I was looking up just some funny facts about this, and apparently the still suit things that they wore, I think toward the end they put on the, like, big baggy thing on top of the still suit too.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Stewart has said that it is one of the most uncomfortable costumes he's ever worn.
Yeah, they look very skin tight. There's a lot of butt action happening.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's the still suit or if it's the thing they put over the still suit. It's actually made from a body bag, like a type of body bag.
Oh.
And the ones they got for use in the film were used.
No.
And they didn't tell the actors until afterward.
Oh my gosh. That's so unnecessary. There seems to be a number of things about this production that are pretty big oversights.
Yeah. Another costuming one is, so there's a scene where Fader Alpha, Sting, comes out and he's like almost naked except for his weird little sci-fi Speedo.
Yeah, his little cod piece.
So that piece was literally made last minute.
Yeah, it felt like it.
Because they fully intended it to be a nude scene.
Oh my gosh.
Of him just walking out naked.
Does that happen in the book?
I don't remember anything like... I mean, there's like the bath thing with like the Baron, which they address in this one because he like showers himself in oil. And they address in the new one because he's like in that gross like black liquid
like
and he's
bathing.
And he's nasty.
Like a swamp creature.
So like, yeah, there's bathing, but it's not... The point of it is like not the nudity. It's just like the grossness of it.
Yeah.
Which they really play up in this one, I feel.
Well, but there's nothing gross about Fade.
No, Fade is just sexy.
Fade is this beautiful angel man. Because it's Sting and they can't make him look gross.
Anyway, one last fun story, just because I thought it was fun, because we've been talking about J.R. Tolkien in our Rings of Power series. J.R. Tolkien does not like Dune.
Really?
Like the book, like at all.
Why?
I don't know. It baffles me because it's a very similar dense world to Lord of the Rings. So Frank Herbert has so much lore, and just like Tolkien, when he passed away, his son took over based off of his notes. There are thousands of pages of Frank Herbert's notes on the world of Dune, because he like did research for like a decade before he even wrote Dune. And I don't understand why Tolkien doesn't like Dune. Anyway.
That's wild. I guess I could see, because like Tolkien, he bases a lot of his philosophy and his storytelling on like the concept of good and evil, and he keeps a very like black and white view of that for the most part. And I feel like in Dune, from what I've seen, there is more gray area.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's something I noticed, especially in this movie. And I'm curious when part 2 of Dune comes out, with the more recent adaptation, what this story will look like, because it is kind of gray as to, obviously the Harkonens are meant to be evil, like the imagery around them.
Yes.
And the way that they behave is very like harsh and murderous. And so they're clearly the enemy in this situation, but that I feel like that might be part of it.
But let's transfer to talking about the story of Dune, because this is the furthest into the story you've seen.
Yeah.
Because you've seen the new movie and not read the book.
So something that I noticed enough to take note of, they do a lot of the voiceover of characters' thoughts. I think this movie does a lot of the like telling, not showing.
Yes.
Like a lot. And I don't know if that, obviously, you know, if in a book, if you're going to cut back and forth between here we are in the Emperor's throne room, he's discussing this with the Spacing Guild, we get that context, so it feels like we have insider information. That is one way to tell a story. In a book, I think that's fine, because you're going to keep unfolding the story, and it's sort of like a mystery to see how it plays out. In the movie, things are more fast-paced. So in order to save time and maybe have more room to have more character moments, I think that you can do a little bit more allusion to what is going on. I don't know. There's a lot of Paul voiceover.
So I think the reason there is a lot of voiceover is because in the book there's like a lot of description of their inner thoughts, and they didn't feel confident enough to just act that out. Because as I was watching it, I was looking at the acting and trying to picture what the scene would be like if you just took the voiceover out, and most of it works without the voiceover.
Right. That's why I was confused as to why that's in there, because like these actors are giving a performance.
Yeah, you're kind of crippling them by putting the voice in.
Yeah, it feels unnecessary, you know?
Because it gives you more lore information, but we don't need that.
No.
And I think that's something that the new Dune did very well, is you are slowly learning more about the world through their dialogue.
Right.
And through their actions.
Yeah. So that's what I mean with the show not tell, is like you can have characters actively saying things, but this movie does a lot of hand holding. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. I like movies where you have to pay attention and you have to piece things together, and you maybe have to watch that movie more than once. Rewatchability is really important, especially now in a day and age when we have a lot of films being made at a very high quality. You have to make your film compelling. And so I think at this point in time, this was a relatively new film genre in the mainstream. And so I think that there's a certain level of like excuse that I can give to David Lynch, because he's probably like, well, a lot of these people probably aren't that familiar with Dune that will go and see it. And
right, but that's kind of your job as the director.
Yeah.
And screenwriter, because Lynch is also the screenwriter for this, so he directly had a hand in how this was portrayed.
Yeah. I'm just trying to like follow the footsteps of where he might have been going.
Yeah.
In terms of how he was trying to lead the audience.
And I think he probably does better in his smaller, grounded films.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was just overwhelmed.
It's a lot.
By this. It's a very dense book. There's a lot to get through, and I can understand being intimidated by it and thinking that, yeah, I need to explain these things directly to the audience, because I don't have time otherwise.
To that point, though, he adds in a lot of unnecessary sci-fi fluff. Like, there are weirding modules.
Yeah, so the way the voice works...
Well, it's not even that necessarily, because the voice... So, my misunderstanding from talking about this film with people is that the weirding modules were the way that they used the voice. And I was like, okay, because I was thinking about it beforehand. I was like, how does the scene where Paul and his mother have been captured and are in the ornithopter, how does that scene work if Paul is going to use the voice? Because he obviously would not have a weirding module. They destroyed them all. But it's because the voice is a separate thing. The weirding modules are this, like, Atreides invented weapon where you can use the power of words.
Which is not in the book at all.
Which is not in the book at all. And it's like adjacent to the voice. And I feel like in this movie they kind of combine the power of the voice with the power of these modules, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you can just have the Atreides be superior fighters and emphasize their armor more, perhaps. Although that would have been really hard to watch visually. Because that is something so in the 2021 Dune, all of the fighters for House Atreides have the, like, wrist-mounted device that makes you vibrate, basically. It gives you this, like, sound barrier so that people can't hit you if they're trying to attack you very quickly, which I imagine works very well against the Harkonens, who seem like barbarians. But in this movie, it's just this absolutely bananas visual effect that makes them look like rectangle people.
Yeah. It's really cool. I'm going to talk about it when we talk about the visual effects later.
It's wild. But I don't know why we couldn't emphasize that more. My problem is just, like, you didn't really use the weirding modules until the end when you need some, like, big deal device to save the day. And it's such a big part of the ending that I can't imagine how they actually in the book go about defeating all of their enemies.
Desert power.
I don't know what that means.
Desert power.
The weirding modules have nothing to do with desert power.
Right, so in the book, the final fight, they basically use every trick of the Fremen to completely destroy the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
It's so well planned that it's not even much of a battle, per se. There are casualties in it, which I won't spoil for you because I want you to enjoy the new Dune
Yeah.
when it comes out. But it's very meticulously planned and well executed, and using the knowledge that they have of their planet to their advantage.
Right.
And the worms.
It's a very like colonial versus indigenous people story.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really interesting story. I just think that there were a lot of things about the way that this film was directed that are very distracting.
The pacing starts fine and then gets rapidly out of control, I feel like.
The moment that we hit that 2-year time skip, it's like, okay, now we're gonna go fight the bad guys and kill them. Because now we are superior and we have this tiny child who is very disturbing, and Paul has drunk the worm spit. So.
Oh, another fun fact about the production. Do you know who was originally slotted to be that child? Please correct me if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Helena Bonham Carter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She was originally going to be the kid, and then was not.
That would have been so cool. I do wonder what trajectory her acting career would have taken, though, because we were looking at the acting career of the actress that actually did play Aaliyah, and it seems like she hasn't been in anything super noteworthy since. So, I don't know if Helena Bonham Carter would have been as successful as she was.
Maybe not.
It seems like the actors that came out of this movie with, like, that still had decent acting roles were ones that already kind of had bigger names. Although I don't know about Kyle MacLachlan.
But what do you think of the director's vision overall? Lynch versus Denis Villeneuve versus potential Ridley Scott, because he was originally slated for this. Because you've seen Aliens, you've seen some of Blade Runner.
So the Denis Villeneuve.
I think it's Villeneuve. It's a long, weird French name.
Yeah. He's the director for 2021 Dune.
He's the director for 2021 Dune and also Blade Runner 2049. He has tackled both of these franchises in a really big way.
I think he's paying more attention to representing a more diverse cast and like a more eclectic sci-fi vision, I suppose. I'm just trying to think through like the imagery in the 84 Dune. Because I think that a trap that is often fallen into in these sci-fi films is the issue that comes up with Orientalism, where they often associate otherness with imagery that relates to China or Japan. And I don't really feel like that comes up as much in this film. But, you know, it's obviously a lot less diverse of a cast. I think I saw one black guy in David Lynch's film, whereas we have a more diverse cast in the 2021 Dune.
And probably, I would say, a more accurate cast, given the setting.
Yeah. I feel like the Fremen in the 84 Dune, I feel like they try to make them look a little bit more Middle Eastern, I suppose, or something like that. I feel like they try to make them look different by giving them, like, darker hair and, like, facial hair and stuff like that. But they're not really successful in making them look different. They all kind of just look like Paul's dad. I do think that there are a lot of really, really cool choices in sets and in costuming that actually are echoed in the 2021 Dune.
Yeah, there is inspiration pulled from this film. There's a lot going for this film visually. The sets are very impressively made.
Yeah.
They're big sets. There's lots of fun costuming. I love the Bene Gesserit costuming in this.
I think the Bene Gesserits felt good. The Emperor, I think it's a cool choice in 2021 Dune to not show the Emperor yet. That's one thing, is he's kind of this mystery, like,
That's kind of how he
scary
is in the
individual.
book too. Is he's not really a big part of it until the end.
And in this film, right off the bat, we see the Emperor, and I think that made it less compelling to me. I would have loved to see how Ridley Scott would have handled the Harkonnens and the Baron, because we know Ridley Scott is good at like dark horror sci-fi, and that's what the Harkonnens are. And the only scene that I really get that vibe in the '84 Dune that David Lynch directed is that the opening scenes when they're establishing where we are and we're on the Harkonnen planet, and there's just that like extremely shadowed like face that's part of the outside facade of whatever palace they're living in, and it's just like kind of a haunting image. That's the only time that I felt that we were really accurately depicting them, because otherwise it just felt very evil Willy Wonka.
Yeah, they're kind of loopy, they're kind of zany, they're very horny.
They're very, like, there's a lot of sexual imagery and tension in any scene that the Harkonnens are in. Like, just, the Baron is absolutely feral constantly. I don't understand how this man is, like, a leader, because he's just insane. Maybe that's the case. Maybe somebody else is pulling the strings.
They also just like eat raw animal. Like there's like the guy has like a juice box with a little mouse in it, and he like squeezes the blood out of it and drinks it. And that's just like stuff that they do all over this film, which is not how they behave in the book.
Yeah. I feel like I need more like precision out of them, and I think we get that in the 2021 version. But
so here's the thing. For me, having read the book, like, and knowing the Baron in that setting, both Barons from both versions of these films are good, but neither of them are my perfect Baron yet.
Yeah.
Because there are moments where he's kind of jovially evil.
Right.
But there are a lot more where he's very calculating and serious. You know, the famous line is him telling Radon to squeeze and squeeze hard when he takes control.
Yeah.
Like, just take everything you can from them and don't let go. Be brutal. Because that is kind of the word that defines the Harkonnens, is brutal.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the women in this movie, because there are few. And the ones that are in it are not characters.
Jessica's there.
She's
just not as involved as she is in the book and in the new one.
Yeah. I have a problem with one. Chani or Cheney in the new Dune. In this film, she is not given anything. She is there to be...
She is a woman.
She is the woman that Paul kisses sometimes.
She shows up and he goes, "You're pretty."
Yeah, and then she's like, "I'm in love with you, Paul." And it just really dampened any opinion that I was going to have of Paul as a character. Because what is compelling about him, that she loves so much about him, you have not shown me. And also, just kind of disappointing that she gets very few scenes, and when we do spend any time with her, she isn't a person. And I sort of feel that way about Jessica. She is there, and she like has one scene where she does a cool thing, and that's about it. Even the Reverend Mother Bene Gesserit, she's probably the most compelling female character, and even she is kind of just like kind of wimpy. I don't know. There are no characters that I can relate to in this movie, and I think that's part of the reason I had a problem connecting with it, because they're all dudes.
Which is a shame, because like this is the same era where we got films like Alien, where we have compelling female characters. Like, part
of that is because Sigourney Weaver made a lot of acting choices that were against Ridley Scott's will. So I think that's part of it, is just like she pushed through and made a lot of choices. Obviously, Ridley Scott made the main character female for a reason. I don't know. I guess he saw Sigourney Weaver and was like, that's Ripley. But in contrast, Dune does not have any of that for me. Is the line that the Reverend Mother says about, she's basically like, Paul can go where women cannot, is that a line in the book?
No, it's not.
Because that bothered me too, because I was like, why?
It's very male centrist.
It's so male centrist. I was like, why are we pushing this?
So the way
What?
the lore is in the book, the Bene Gesserits have been like breeding the perfect human for like generations.
Mm-hmm.
Really paying attention to bloodlines, and like that's the reason Jessica's even with Leto, is because he has a really strong, powerful bloodline that they want in their gene pool.
Yeah.
And not in the context of even like historically of like, oh, marry this king so that we can have like peace among this, and like, you're basically just like a bartering tool. It's to further their own cause in making more powerful Bene Gesserits.
Yeah.
Which is why they tell her to have only daughters.
Right.
They are terrified of Paul because he has these like certain traits in his bloodline, I guess, in his genes that make him, I guess, more powerful. I don't know. I don't think the prophecy specifies gender. I don't remember. I'd have to read through again.
Yeah.
But anyway, the focus being on the power of the voice more so than the person itself.
Right. What is the voice?
So Frank Herbert's world is more grounded. It's not like Star Wars where it has like a magic system.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's just genetics, and humans have just like purposely evolved their brains to have abilities like this. There's other weird human anomalies that are in the other books. Basically, they found out that for the purpose of war, the way to go was not to make better and better weapons, but to make better and better people to fight those wars.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the Bene Gesserit's role, is like their manipulation of these powers. Historically, in the Dune world, they move away from atomics, which is why I was so surprised when they used them in this movie, because that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
And is addressed in later books, because basically it's unethical and impractical and destroys too much. So that's why they have things like the shields and the swords, because bullets won't do anything to those shields. So it's very much like man-to-man combat is how you solve things.
Yeah. Although the Harkonens do use explosives.
They do. They have specific explosives for the ships, because the ships also have that shielding, which is a really cool visual in the new Dune.
Yeah.
Of it exploding, but they're like slow bombs.
Right. Yeah.
So like technology evolved, and they had to evolve their weaponry to match that. And traditional projectiles were not going to do it. But I think I want to transition to talk about the VFX. Because we talked about the costuming, we talked about the practical effects a little bit, but I want to talk about more the practical effects and like the visual storytelling of this, because there's a lot of stunning sets and imagery.
Yeah.
And a lot of practical effects. So the worms are real.
Yeah.
There's actually a really cool corridor digital video that breaks down like and compares the visuals from both movies. But the worm is like a puppet that they have in this like really fine, I think it's glass.
Yeah,
it's like
micro glass.
It's like really fine micro glass, because they wanted the scale of the sand to be accurate.
But you want it to still move like sand.
Yes. Which meant that everyone who worked with it had to wear respirators, because if you breathe in micro glass, you're basically breathing glass into your lungs and shredding your lungs.
Right.
So very dangerous to work with, but it looks cool. But just stuff like that. And also use of like you were asking me while we were watching it, like whether some of these things were matte paintings.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of them are, but there's a lot of use of big minis in really clever ways. So like when they have these grand scale sets of like giant ships landed and they're walking down the runway, it's actually just big minis close to the camera with a hole in it, so you can see the set behind it.
Yeah.
That's further away.
Which is so smart.
It's so cool. So like they basically just made a huge scaffolding, put a set on it, and the camera's up there, and they're just looking down onto, the part where the characters are.
Yeah.
And it's seamless. It looks so good.
Like, you can't tell.
And I really wish that we had more of that still going on, because I feel like the industry's kind of moved away from practical, just because visual effects are getting better and better and more available. But there is something to the realness of these suits, of these items, and being there and having the actors interact with them that makes it really, really special.
Well, and I'm sure it helps too with the actual acting to have a physical thing to look at.
Absolutely. And the new Dune movie did a fantastic job of blending that as well, because they worked really, really well with the visual effects department and on set, and keeping them in mind and having things there. So, like, obviously, when the thopters are flying around and doing stuff, that's visual effects. But they have the cockpit body of those ships built out on set. And they used a technique called I think they call them sand screens. So rather than having a green screen and messing with your lighting because it's reflecting off of that green surface, they have like these huge like sand colored panels, which they then just like roto out and replace with, buildings or walls or whatever you want in the background, just so that they can have the better lighting and have something for the actors to see that's not distracting them. So there's kind of a fun history of visual and practical effects in both of the movies.
I did want to talk about some of the set choices a little bit, both good and bad, because I think the imagery surrounding the Harkonens would have been better handled by Ridley Scott. And what I mean by that is, there's a scene where we were introduced to the Baron, where he's getting his nasty little pustules attended to by this guy who's way too excited about his diseases.
He's horny for diseases. Everyone's horny for something. Feder Alpha's horny for murder, and that's just the trait of the Harkonnens in this movie.
This room is painted like a green screen green, and it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why they made that choice, because it's like a totally like wild contrast to everything that's happening in that scene.
It doesn't go with any of the other set colors either.
No, like I thought you would do like a gray or like something dingy, but it's this like neon green. And it shows up again later. The Emperor is sitting on a throne that is a similar shade of green. And I don't know if that was like an intentional choice. Like they're trying to connect those things or something like that, but that was just a really weird decision to me. The Atreides palace, when we're on their planet, Caladan, is way more what I was expecting for sets. And even like the Arakeen palace that they move into when they come to Dune was like more what I was expecting. So that was a weird, I don't know if that was like we ran out of time
or thing. That's the paint that we had and we went with it.
Or that's what we had. But I wonder if watching this movie in a higher quality also sharpened some things that were not meant to be sharpened.
That's the thing about watching this in 4K is that like any little imperfections or errors are going to be blatantly obvious. Which is kind of cool for me because I like breaking apart visual effects and like for the blue eyes on everyone, like you can see the mask that they like drew out around the eyes.
Yeah.
By hand, I would add.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of effects like that took a lot of time. Like the shields you were referencing earlier.
Yeah.
It's a wild looking like 3D cube people effect, and it's not CG. They drew out the shapes and then cut the film into those shapes and displace them a little bit to make it look like looking through a prism, I guess.
Yeah. That's how I describe it.
But it was painstakingly animated like a collage, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you're just going frame by frame on each of the shapes on those shields and cutting film and moving it.
Yeah. It was a cool visual effect. It was just really distracting.
It was, and like when they made mention to things that were happening in the shields, I could not see what was happening in the shields.
No, absolutely not.
He fights Gertie, and Gertie's like, but look down. I'm like, I can't see a thing inside your shields.
Yeah. Well, and then they like show the scene where they've cut away the film so you can see his hand with the dagger.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, all right, fine. I guess that works. I think it's a really interesting visual. There was another thing that I noticed. I don't know if it stood out to you, but there are moments where they use this scene transition where it's like the scene tears apart into another scene. There was a part where it was going back and forth between like the Emperor and then Paul was like somehow listening in on what was happening there. And it just kept tearing apart the screen. And it was a really jarring transition. I don't know why they did that.
It's a choice.
It's certainly, I mean, there's choices like that in Star Wars, so.
I think that's part of Star Wars' charm, though, is the really bad transitions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's just part of the aesthetic for me at this point.
Yeah.
Is the cheesy PowerPoint transitions between scenes.
Yeah, just like the stock transitions.
Let's do a diamond pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do
Why?
Star wipe. This was like, let's do flesh tearing.
Would you like to rate
Yeah.
this movie
I think so.
for your chaotic rating system?
Yeah. So I don't have a set rating system. Usually it's out of 10. Sometimes it's out of 5. I think this time I'm gonna give this movie 4 space pugs out of 10.
Ouch.
I don't think I would watch it again. And the storytelling choices are not my favorite, but there is really interesting visuals and imagery that I think have informed a lot of sci-fi content past it, which I think is the case for all of the big sci-fi names that were coming out at this time. So maybe I'd give it 5.
All right. My rating system is on a scale of 5 to -5. 5 being the greatest it could be, 0 being the worst, and -5 being so bad it's good. And I'm conflicted on rating this one because I feel like it, for me, it's either like a 3 out of 5 on one side of the scale or a -3 out of 5 on the other side, because there are parts of this that are kind of cheesy, corny, but I really enjoy watching this.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy the film as, like, in its historical context of how important it was to filmmaking. So I think I'm just going to give it both ratings, because the parts that are competent and good, I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5. That kind of 50-50 for me.
Peeling back your nostalgia.
Yeah.
The objective rating.
The objective rating, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. And for the other half of that 5, I'm going to give it my -2.5 out of 5, because the bad parts are so enjoyable to watch for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's goofy. It's out there.
They're trying stuff.
But it's really fun.
It is fun. Which is why I say, like, there are clips of it where Gurney is holding a pug, and I'm like,
and
yes,
charging into battle with his
excellent,
little pug.
Very good. But there are other scenes that are just, like, I mean, you said yourself, you watched this movie with your dad, and you couldn't get past the worm scene.
I know, I used to always fall asleep when the first worm showed up.
So, like, this is a movie for people who hardcore love Dune and want Dune content.
Yeah.
And 2021 Dune is a movie made for Dune fans, but also for a more general sci-fi fan.
Yes. It is I think the new one is a refreshing take and adaptation that'll bring people into the book world of Dune.
Yeah. Which it definitely has.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how many copies of that book fly off the shelves? You can't even get the audiobook from the library.
No, I've been waiting on the third Dune book, audiobook, for a while now.
Yeah.
Just because people are reading this series, and it's great.
Yeah, it's great.
And I think it's cool that people are coming back to it, and probably coming back to this movie as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really cool and unique sci-fi. I someday would love to read the books. I don't have time right now. I have other things to read.
Yeah.
But I am actually reading like other sci-fi that kind of have little echoes of Dune.
Oh, yeah. So this book inspired so many people to make stories.
Yeah. So I definitely like see the influence of this book in modern day. So overall, thanks for introducing me to this.
Yeah.
We are edging into spooky season.
We sure are.
We will be releasing this at the end of September, which, you know, if you're me, September 1st was the beginning of spooky season. But starting in October, we will be pulling out some more spooky, Halloween-y themed films. So I won't say what my next choice will be, but it will fall into that spooky season sort of vein. So,
exciting.
Look forward to that in 2 weeks. And we'll be back soon.
See you then.
Thanks again for dropping in, and we hope you've enjoyed the evening as much as we've enjoyed having you here. Till next time, please drive carefully, and good night now.